When you're new at watchmaking and you finally decide to add a staking set to your tool collection, you may wonder what the pros and cons of this Chinese set are. Is it going to enable you to do more, or is it just going to be a waste of money? So today we're going to take a closer look at this tool, which stakes are included in the set, the quality of the build, and we're going to look at a couple of the most common repairs that you would do with a staking set. Now, this is not a review. I have just had so many people that are in my watch repair course asking about it. So this is just my opinion on this particular tool based on 30 years of using staking sets for making watch repairs. Okay, so if you're watching this, you already know that the staking set is one of the most important tools that we use for things like replacing balance staffs, closing pivot holes, and a bunch of other things. And you want to move up to the next level to be able to fix more things in your watch repair. You probably also know that high quality staking sets, such as the vintage Kendrick and Davis Inverto series of staking sets, or even the Swiss Bergeron 5285 set, they have long been considered the standard, and that's for good reason, as they're very well made, they're very precise, but they can get a little pricey. So it makes sense that a lot of people start looking at inexpensive Chinese-made staking sets, but the comments in social media are all over the place. Some people say they like them, some people say they don't. So what do you believe? So what I wanted to do was to give you an impartial opinion based on my experience so you can decide if it's for you. Now, to start with, the listing for these staking sets, they don't include what stakes and stumps are included in the set. So let's look at that first. All right, so to start with, you get a small frame with a centering stake. You get 20 flat stakes that have center holes of varying sizes. You get flat stakes, 3 concave stakes with holes, 16 round top with holes, 4 round tops with no holes, and 5 needle stakes. The stumps that are included are 1 convex, 2 flat with center holes, 2 flat with no holes, 1 small rounded stump, 1 large rounded stump with a hole. And this one, I'm not sure what it is. It is basically kind of useless. For sure, one of the main questions that comes up is around the steel and how hard the steel is. Now, when you look at vintage sets, as well as the Bergeron set, they're known for using fantastic steel. And their punches, they're going to maintain their shape and the sharpness even after 100 years of use. Now, since I don't have a scientific way to test the hardness of this metal, what I'm just going to do is an old-fashioned practical test, and it's going to be done basically based on how we would use it. All right, so here I have a flat stake, and it has a center hole. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a pin gauge in it that fits snugly into the hole. Now, the reason I'm doing that is I want to look at it and to see if the hole compresses and gets any smaller after I hammer on the stake. Now, with the stake in the frame, I'm just going to give it 20 light taps with a brass hammer. I'm not trying to strike it too hard. I'm just tapping it lightly like I would do in a real life repair. Now I'm inserting the pin gauge back into the hole. And as you can see, it still fits. So on this particular stake, there was no change to the hole. Nothing compressed. Now I'm going to do the same thing, but this time I'm going to use a rounded tip with a center hole. Now, this type of stake would be used to spread out a rivet on a balance staff. So here, I'm just going to give it the same 20 light taps. But now, as you can see, when I try to put the pin gauge in, it doesn't even come close to going into the hole. And when you look at the tip now, you can even see that it's flattened out. What that tells us is that this steel is actually quite soft. How soft? It doesn't really matter. This thing's not really going to last very long. Now, looking at the frame, you can see that it's a copy of the Bergeron frame 15285B. The stakes fit well into the frame, and there doesn't appear to be too much play with the stake when I move it side to side. Now, when I compare it to my K&D, the K&D feels basically the same. One issue that will develop over time is that this top part is made out of a soft brass. So the freedom between the stake and this hole that runs through the frame, it's going to get larger the more it's used. And the overall precision is going to decrease until it basically becomes unusable. Now, the stakes that come with the Chinese set, they follow the same numbering system as Bergeron. For example, the stake number 212, it has a center hole of 1 millimeter, and you can see that this 1 millimeter pin gauge fits snugly into the hole. And these pin gauges are Z grade, so they're very accurate. Checking number 266, which has a center hole of 1.4 millimeter, you can see that the matching pin gauge also fits in snugly. So overall, that's pretty impressive considering the price point of the staking set. Unfortunately, in my opinion, one of the biggest weaknesses of this set is the lack of compatibility with other vintage sets, as well as no compatibility between the new Bergeron stakes that you can buy from any supplier. These stakes measure out at 5 millimeters, and the Bergeron, as well as the K&D, they measure out at 4.7. So that means when one of these becomes damaged, there's no way to replace it. And the one that's going to get damaged is the one that you need the most. Also consider that with the limited number of available sizes that comes with a set like this, that means that in many cases, you're going to have to settle for using a stake that doesn't fit right on the part that you're working on. And this is going to increase the chance of you damaging that part. All right, so now let's go through a couple of the common repairs done with a staking set and see if this set can actually get the job done. You know, no doubt that many of you are looking at adding a staking set so that you're able to replace broken balance staffs. Now, the process is pretty simple. You know, once you get the collet and the hairspring off, the next step is to remove the roller table, which is actually riveted onto the staff. Now, with a K&D set, you can just use the roller table removing stump. But with a set like this, you're going to need to get a tool like the Bergeron 2810 or something similar to be able to remove the roller table. Not a big deal. Just understand that the set's not going to be able to do that. Now, when you are removing a balance staff, there's basically a couple different types. You got friction fit and ones that are riveted on. Now, friction fit staffs, they have a tapered arbor that usually fits into some sort of steel collar that's in the balance wheel arm. And to remove them, you just drive them out. It's pretty straightforward. Riveted staffs, on the other hand, they're a completely different animal. Instead of it being friction fit in a steel collar, the balance staff fits into a hole that's in the soft brass of the balance wheel arm. But that fit is not enough to hold it into place, and that's where the rivet comes in. Now, when it comes to removing a riveted balance staff, experienced watchmakers know that the best way to remove the staff is to actually cut off the rivet while it's in a lathe. And that's because the rivet is wider than the hole that the staff is sitting in. And if you're not careful, the rivet will enlarge the hole as you're driving it out. But that's not really possible because most people don't have a lathe. So what a lot of people like to use, as well as myself, is a tool made by K&D called a balance staff remover number 50. And basically what it does is it stabilizes the balance wheel when it's in the staking set, and it helps to prevent damage to the balance wheel arm when you're removing the staff because it's keeping it stable. As you can see, it does work in my K&D set, but in this frame, it doesn't fit. So you lose the ability to be able to use this tool. Now, when you install a riveted staff, you use a dome stake that fits over the top of the rivet, and as you tap on it, it spreads open the rivet around the hole. For this to work, the hole in the stake needs to be very close to the width of the balance staff. It needs to be a really tight fit. If the hole in the stake is too large, it's going to be sitting outside the rivet, and all you're going to do is just smash the rivet down instead of spreading it out. So that's the first issue. Will the set have a dome stake with a hole that works with the size of the balance staff you're working with? Now, once the rivet is actually spread out, then you're going to come back with a flat tip stake with a center hole. And you want that hole to be just a little bit larger than the balance staff as well. And you're going to use this to flatten out the rivet. If the center hole is too large, it's not going to touch the rivet and it's not going to get flattened out. Another common repair is closing holes, whether the hole's in a plate, a bridge, or in a mainspring barrel. Now, normally you would use a rounded stake that's on the top of the hole and either a rounded stake or a stump on the underside of the hole. So it's kind of sandwiched in. So the hole is sandwiched in between these two stakes. Now, since this frame is unable to use stakes on the bottom, right, like most other frames, you have to rely on the two rounded stumps that come with the set and hope that they're the right size for the hole that you're trying to close. Now, theoretically, it's possible, but in reality, it's pretty unlikely. Now, there's also a bunch of more specialized repairs that the staking set can do, like tightening roller tables, tightening cannon pinions, adjusting guard pins, adjusting the end of a pendant sleeve in a pocket watch, removing arbors from wheels and pallet forks. You can reshape springs. You can rivet in a new regulator key. You can replace regulator pins. And these are just a few of the things a staking set will do. And these are all things that a set like this is not going to be able to do. So really, what's the bottom line? Well, that's up to you. If you just want an inexpensive way to be able to try out some staking repairs to get a feel for it, I mean, you can pick these up on AliExpress from anywhere from $50 to $70 or maybe more. But just realize that when you're getting it, that it's going to be very limited in what you're able to do. So for me, when I bought this one, I'm just chalking it up as the cost of making videos, and I'm going to be happy with my new tool holder. And because there is much more to learn, I hope to see you in the next video.